So it's now 1 minute past, and we are going to start this webinar. So first of all, hi everyone, and warm welcome to this Klingit webinar. Today we're going to talk about AI and specifically about the use case and advantages of training the technology on your specific brand, and thus creating a unique setup that caters for brand consistency and towards legal uncertainty of the mainstream tools that are available and that most of us have heard about by now. In the interest of presenting as great value as possible to everyone who is listening, we will allow time towards the end of the webinar for questions. So we will have a Q&A sessions at the end. Please post your questions in the chat throughout the presentation, and we will cater to as many as possible at the end of this seminar. Please remember to keep your tone nice and respectful while using the chat. If you want to be sure to receive an answer to your question, please write your email address in the question. I will download the list of questions after the event and make sure to get back to everyone who we did not have time to reply to in this seminar. Hope that will work for all of you. Also, I would like to remind everyone that we are recording this session and we will later make it available through our webpage and our YouTube channel. So about us who are presenting, my name is Rickard and I'm one of the founders of Klingit. I also take care of our marketing activities on a day-to-day basis. And with me today, I have two of my colleagues and AI experts. It's Isabelle Askelöv and Joey Mitchell. Isabelle has been with Klingit from the get-go and was the first person in our company who took an interest into generative AI and its possibilities for our industry. And Joey Mitchell joined us this summer in order to help us set up a unique AI generator in a pilot project. And he has deep knowledge and experience from this space. About previous content, this webinar is part of a series of educational and thought leadership activities that we do here at Klingit. If you are interested in exploring these and other topics further, please feel free to check out our blog, our website, and also our social media channels, where we'll be posting thought leadership and educational material regularly. And those will be on the topics of generative AI, graphic design, design operations, and marketing in general. So about Klingit, I'm not going to tell you all the details about our service. I'm just taking the time to briefly introduce those of you who are not familiar with Klingit with what we do. So Klingit is a design as a service company that provides access to top creative talent in all areas of expertise seamlessly. We want to be a contemporary alternative and challenger to the traditional agency world. With Klingit, you can scale your creative and design production up and down with flexibility, cost efficiency, and in accordance to your needs. You get access to our end-to-end digital production studio, where you structure work, follow production, provide feedback, and interact with your project manager and creative team and keep track of your consumption and so on. Klingit has been around for almost 3 years now, and we have grown to serve over 100 clients, among them the likes of H&M, Schibsted, Semper, and Foodora, but also many smaller companies and scale-ups and professional services companies within a wide range of industries. Klingit also invests substantially in generative AI in order to make our own production of design as efficient as possible and to set up efficient production environments on behalf of our clients. And that is parts of what we're going to explore more in detail today. So the agenda for today is, first, we will talk about AI a little bit in general and get an introduction to where AI is at today. Then we will explore some of the complications with the common approach to AI, and we will discuss more specifically about training your own unique AI generator. That will be followed by some conclusions and summary, and last but not least, a Q&A session. So without further ado, I will hand over to Isabel to start by giving us an introduction to generative AI and the landscape we're facing today. So please, Isabel.
Thank you so much, Rickard, and nice to see everyone here. Well, everything you thought you knew about design and content production is going to change, and it's going to change very quickly. So I'm going to start this session with a little history. This tool, DALL-E. In April 2022, the company OpenAI released this software. And for the first time in history, suddenly a child or anyone were able to create an original piece of art simply by entering text into an input line, like we know from Google. But this time it was different, because this time what came out was an original. In the beginning, this was very fascinating, right? We could tell the system to create, let's say, a monkey flying to the moon in the style of Vincent van Gogh, and it came out just like that. And now, only 1 year later, the power of generative AI has reshaped our capabilities. We now have the ability to craft photorealistic images from our own imagination, construct apps in seconds, and ChatGPT we've welcomed as an assistant that seamlessly integrates in our daily life. Generative AI was born from improvements in machine learning, better computers, and access to tons of data. And it has led us to the generative AI landscape that we are facing today, where we are mainly talking about 4 different areas that it serves. And that is text, audio, video, and image. And these generators can be seen as our digital artists. And these digital artists can craft new content, all by recognizing patterns from vast amount of data that it has trained on. If you look at these 4 areas, they all learn in different ways because they are trained on different things. And those different learning techniques is what we call AI models. And it's just like in the art world where we have painters, musicians, writers, each with its unique talent. We are facing hundreds of Gen AI tools out there that are built on different AI models in these 4 areas, and new ones popping up daily. And all these models have different setups, but the rule from them all can be simply break down into 3 steps. You have a base model, and that is a large amount of data. You train it and you explore it. We're not going to teach you today to build a $1 billion AI model from scratch, but today we're going to talk about cutting your own version based on existing base models and how you can modify them to get specialized in your brand and therefore benefit from generative AI in your content production from the so-called image generators. An image generator, or a so-called diffusion model, is like an artist, trained to turn chaos into art. Imagine starting with a messy, noisy picture and then teaching a computer brain to clean it up step by step until it becomes a beautiful image. It's a very, very complicated process. And if we were about to dive deep into all those details, we'd be here for a day. But the only thing we need to know is that diffusion models need a large amount of images to be trained on in order to learn these patterns. If we look at this example, what you see here is the result from training a diffusion model. And this is actually a current AI exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York from the AI artist Rake Anadol. And over the course of 6 months, Anadol and his team trained a text-to-image model and fed it with over 300,000 of extremely high resolution images taken from more than 100,000 of artworks stored in the MoMA galleries. And this is the output and the art that it has created. The image generators are a game changer in how we are and how we will produce content in the future. All of a sudden, we can create anything we ever imagined simply by adding text description known as a prompt. And seconds later, we receive an original image. You can say that we are moving into what could be called as the generative age, where content will be created with syntography, and that means created artificially, and with a speed that no human ever can conquer with. So we need to adapt to this, and we need to learn. But first, we need to understand that there are two ways of approaching these image generator tools out there. And that is, do I want to create AI art, or do I want to create content that I can use day to day and is aligned with my brand? So we're going to show you now the differences between these two approaches by demonstrating the functionalities of two of the most used image generators today, Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. Some people say that Midjourney is trained on hundreds of million images, but nobody knows. And that's the thing with Midjourney. No one knows what it's trained on, and no one can access it because it's closed source and run on proprietary code. What we do know is that by typing a description, a so-called prompt, we receive an image output based on that description. Here you can see the prompt or the description in the corner to the right, and that's the image that were generated from the description. Midjourney is a great text-to-image tool, especially for creating what we call AI art, where the only limitation really is your own imagination. It can take creativity to a whole new level because it often produces, let's say, unexpected results, and those surprises can serve as a source of inspiration, prompting users to explore new directions they might not have ever thought about. If we look at this slide, you see a few examples of AI campaigns created in Midjourney, like the AI Coca-Cola ad, or using it to experiment with different visuals, like the concept store for Lacoste, or like we did here at Klingit for a fictional case for IKEA, where we used it to easily generate a scene setting for an ad. But Midjourney is just a base model. And because you don't know what it's trained on, you can't fully control the output. And to control that output, you need to give it very clear instructions. And this itself is tricky and requires a lot of skills in being able to what I would call AI art direct. And that is to say, giving the right instructions. And even if you are great at giving instructions, you can't fully control the output. And you can't train Midjourney fully on your brand style. Another big issue with Midjourney is the legal side of it. It is trained on image data that we don't know anything about, and that raises a question about copyright. Who owns the right to the AI-generated content that is created? And the thing is, the images that we create, they do not have copyright, because any image that is created ends up on a public domain, and it feeds back into the Midjourney engine, where it can be remixed, upscaled, and used by other users. And this may be quite uncomfortable for a commercial usage. On the other side of the spectrum, we have Stable Diffusion, another image generator. However, unlike Midjourney, Stable Diffusion takes an open source approach, sharing its source code with the public. Developed by Stability AI, it actually encourages users to tweak and use its code to create their unique models based on their existing model. Stable Diffusion supports thousands of custom models, which is 100% customized. And that is something we're going to show you now. Over to you, Joey.
Thanks, Isabel. So Isabel spoke to you about some of the more exciting aspects that can be done with Gen AI, and I'm going to speak to you about the more boring, the more day-to-day, the stuff that you can include in your pipeline moving forwards. So I wouldn't recommend building an AI model from scratch. The big companies out there have poured infinite resources into doing this. And to be honest, we're not going to be able to do one better than them with the resources we have at hand. So I think we need to think about what we want to achieve. And really what we want to achieve is to put our brand essence, to put our brand guidelines, our look and feel into an image. And to do that, we can take an existing base model and customize it to get that outcome. So much like when you're working with a traditional designer or content creator, you need a brand identity or a document that outlines the rules, so our guidelines. And in the guidelines, usually this will outline your color palette, your imagery, all of the rules that need to ensure that all of the content created matches. These guidelines are exactly the same for the AI models, except instead of being guidelines, they're rules that we can build. This process can be a pain in the ass at the beginning, but once it's done, it's done. You only have to do it once. So yeah, as I mentioned, we need to create a rule set. But unlike a person, a computer is unable to interpret what you say. It doesn't think between the lines. It doesn't guess. So you have to be pretty crystal clear with what you want. Yeah, so, oh, sorry, go back one. Yeah, in humans, when we work, we have intuition. So we understand, how to frame an image, where things go, and what someone means when they explain roughly, like I want a picture of a bee in my style. When someone says that, as a designer, you're able to interpret all of the missing aspects. But when we're building a custom model, we really have to define each and every aspect. So I'm going to walk you through how to do that. So here's a few of the tools that we can use when we're building a model. Of course, you will know prompting. So this is just entering text. But we have fine tuning, which is building a model, say 1,500 images that will tailor a base model into something more related to you. We have adapters, which is an even smaller version of fine tuning, so 10 to 20 images. Sampling is kind of a way that we can determine the variety and the style of the outputs. It's kind of like the boundaries that are used. We also have our database of all of the models and the learnings that we've done before. So we can transfer this knowledge across models, and we can take like 20% of this model and 20% of that model and combine it all to make a model that's useful for your outcome. We have a few other options here, but they basically are additional controls that tell the AI what to focus on and how we want the image to come, and we can use them to control every aspect. So I think we should work through an example. So here's an image I've created just using a prompt. So you can see on the left, I've got a extremely long and complex positive and negative prompt, and that is used to create this style. So in real life, if you came to me and say, make me an AI model for this, I would probably just take a load of images and train different models and styles and adapters like that, and then I would use that to create your style on a consistent level. But for the purpose of this webinar, we're going to walk through each step as if they were separate steps. The advantage of doing each thing separately does mean that you have much more control and freedom moving forwards. You can unlock you know, I want to change the color, I want to change the style, I want to change the mood. All of those things can be unlocked, and that can be pretty powerful. So we're going to start at the beginning, and we're going to try and achieve that image we just saw. So the first thing we want to do is we want to, you know, enter a prompt. You know, I want to have a dog sitting, and I want to make sure that my prompt remains that simple. I don't want to have to go into descriptions or art styles or anything like that. So the first attempt, we type in a dog sitting, and about 20% of the time we get a photo, and about, you know, 20% of the time we get illustrations, we get vectors, we get oil painting. So we need to address the base model. And you can pick a photo-based model. There's many websites like Civet AI, Hugging Face, GitHub, where you can download a model. The problem with these models are you have no idea where they're trained, so you need to be careful with your legal, you know, aspect when you do that. But for us, we've trained our own model that's on photos, and this model uses about 1,200 to 1,500 photos that give it that photorealistic feel. So yeah, the first step, changing the base model. So I've put these in order of something that makes sense to us as a person, but in reality, it wouldn't necessarily follow this order at all. But for here, we want to build in the color palette, so the brand's color. There are a few ways to do this. We can go all the way down to a foundational level, and we can change the sRGB values, or the RGB values, and we can say, yeah, blue is normally 255. Maybe we bring it down a bit and add some red or green in there so that the color shifts, and then the whole color palette will shift with that. This can be useful, but it can also be a bit limiting. You want to have the rules kind of loose enough that it can follow along what you're saying without being tied into a specific thing. So if that becomes an issue, or if it starts to think, oh, everything needs to be blue, so that means my content needs to be related to blue, which sometimes happens, we can come up with another way where we add the color in at the end. But the thing is, when you add in a color palette or this pixel editing, RGB editing, we can control it in a value. So you don't have to be 100% make everything blue. You can give it just like a nudge in the right direction. But once you've started incorporating a color palette, you can see that the dog will then change to blue. So that means we have to change our prompt to define the color of the dog. So instead of a dog sitting, now we need to say a brown dog sitting. So the prompt is getting a little bit longer, but I think that's not too bad. So the next step is, yeah, how to build up the image, the composition, and the structure. So you can always add in a hidden prompt that has some keywords, such as a rule of thirds or golden ratio, something like this. But I try to avoid that. You know, the more additional hidden prompts that you have, the more things that are going on that are out of your control, which we want to avoid, really. But yeah, I would probably feed in a few reference images of how to set up the frame. So instead of just a dog on the floor like a product shot, I'd want to have interacting with its environment to have some sort of depth in there. So I would use, you know, a set of reference images, maybe 20 images. It probably works. And also, while creating this pipeline, I would, every time I see a seed number or a value that works, I will note that down and save that for later. A seed number is a bit like a key. When you get the seed number that looks good, every time you use that seed, it will create something similar. So it's kind of like a key into like a path of generation that it will always follow. You can set up, you know, additional spatial restraints, using like outlines or framing, but you need to be careful with this, because if we want to create a general purpose editor instead of just a one-off, then these rules can become too set in stone, and then the imagery will all start to look the same. Instead of adapting the style, they will just look the same, which we want to avoid. So yeah, this is kind of like the last sort of phase where we want to add in the overall atmosphere and filter. So for me, when I think of atmosphere, I think the way to create that is to control all of the aspects that we mentioned. So you have your color, you have your reference images, you have the style, and you want to put that all into sort of settings where each one has like a percent, and the atmosphere is like the blend between those settings. So it could be, you know, color palette is dominant, and when the color palette is dominant, then everything becomes, you know, more vibrant. So this is kind of a setting that you would want to set up. And that will give you atmosphere. I'm not going to go into too much detail about a filter. I'm sure you're all masters of it from Instagram and TikTok and all the socials. But that is something that is in traditional media, a bit like a Lightroom filter. You can just chuck it on the end, and that will give it that final little kick. So I quickly walked you through how to create a custom model based on, you know, a starting point. As you can see from these images here, I'm using the same setup but changing the prompt. So we've basically created a stock image generator using the same style that we built for the dog, which is pretty useful. Means you don't have to go looking up all through those, you know, those websites where everyone ends up using the same images. But it's what's amazing about it is that this setup, yeah, can take maybe, you know, a few hours a day, maybe longer, depending on how complex it is. But once it's done, anyone in your company can have access to this tool that you've built, and then you can create infinite variations or infinite images that all follow the same rules. So if you want to take it one step further, you can start building something that I call a scene. I used to be a 3D artist, so scene is a common term. It might seem a little bit out of place here, but when I talk about scenes, what I really mean is a set of images or a set of setup, you know, a setup that shares a common theory or story, and all the images reflect each other. So if you look at these images here, all the animals are different, but there's a definite link between them, and it's pretty obvious to see that. You know, you don't need to be a marketing guru to understand that when there's consistency throughout your imagery, then people start to recognize your brand more often. So if you think about that and then think about the power of this in the future, if you're able to take your client database, your user database, and then instead of making a dog just generally, you'll be able to make a dog that is that person's pet or is their favorite animal. You can link this up to an automated, you know, database. And when you're serving adverts or imagery to a person, you can create, every single person can have their own version of the same advert or same image. And that can be done automated. It can be super fast. So yeah, just to quickly go over scenes, summarize them a little bit without getting too hung up on the details. The way I see it is that there can be many additional aspects that can be built on top of your customized model. All of these variations lean heavily into, you know, a base narrative, and that's what we want to do. Is we want to build a tool where instead of you getting hung up on the individual complexities, you want to worry about the story and let the AI solve the issues of how do I link a monkey giving a thumbs up to my brand identity. Yeah, if you're doing that with a designer, that's going to take some time and a lot of back and forth between you and them. But if you do it with AI and you have the style built in, it's just going to do it. It's not going to question it. It's not going to think, well, this is ridiculous. It's just going to do it. So if you think of that on a mass scale, you could link this up to, you know, a database of thousands of images or thousands of animals or inputs. You can set this AI going overnight, and you can come back in the morning with, you know, every animal in the world sat in front of a plate, and you can pick out which ones you want to use. The manual labor here is removed, but the skill is in creating an image or a scene that works, you know, generically. So you need to be more creative in what you're thinking. So you don't want to think in just a one-off image. You want to think, what do I want to tell with this image so I can make millions of them? So quickly just go over a few of the advantages I see of doing this and why you should probably think about building your own AI model. Consistency is key. You know, you want all of your imagery to look good. And with all of these tools out there, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, Adobe Firefly, everyone now has access to create images. You know, someone without any artistic skill can make images that look good. And whereas this is brilliant for creativity and exploration, it does lead you into issues of, well, now everyone in my company can make images that are potentially used to represent the brand. And that starts to become dangerous. And when you start to dilute your image, your identity, people, you know, there's so much content out there now. You need to stand out. You need your brand identity to be at the forefront. So yeah, you can do this. Yeah. So just to summarize this slide, is if you build one tool, you can have a person in control, one master designer that has a creative vision that everyone has access to and they can use. So they're not ever diluting this brand identity. So another key advantage is adaptability. If you have seasonal changes, you have trend changes, and occasionally you do rebrands, or you want to see what a recolor looks like. In a traditional world, that would take a lot of time, and it costs, it's really costly. So in today's world where things are changing and something can go viral instantly, and then all of the brands will have their own version of that image or done in a month. Now you can do it in a day or two. So I've tried to demonstrate how we can integrate merging styles across a few images. So on the left, we have the image, which is a dog in front of a fireplace, and that's our traditional brand. And as we're coming up to Christmas, so I would think, right, I want to blend in that Christmas look. So there's a light sprinkle of foliage and a Christmas feel. That's about 25% Christmas, blended in with the original brand. And then the final image on the right, you see, is a full-blown winter wonderland, but still remaining within that brand identity. And if you use this approach, you can build your core brand identity, and throughout the year you can have the seasonals blended into your style. So you don't have to make these really cheesy like one-off seasonal image. You can have it gradually come in and go out of your imagery. And this can be really powerful if you think, okay, we're going to do a brand campaign around the Football World Cup. So you can start in advance. We're integrating that kind of content into your imagery, go through the event, and then phase it out. So you can keep your brand identity common throughout, but you can update or you can change it regionally. So if you have an Asian division, an English division, a European division, you can create one master image and have all three of those, make a variation that matches their locality. So here's an example of how simple this can be. Now we have a base model. All of these images are quite complex to imagine, but with the base model we have, the prompt required is really basic. So we have a man on a motorcycle looking at us. We have no reference to the framing or the style or the color. That's done in the base model. So that means that everyone in your company can quickly, access this. This is really democratizing the way that people work, because just because someone hasn't learned to draw or hasn't learned to use 3D software doesn't mean they're not creative. Now we give them the freedom to explore what's in their mind, and maybe some people will come up with something amazing. This is not about isolating people and shrinking down it. It's about giving everyone the freedom to play, but within our guidelines, within the rules that we've preset. So yeah, this is kind of coming towards the end of my section, but yeah, if you have built yourself a custom model, say you use Stable Diffusion, you can then go somewhere like GitHub or Hugging Face, and there's infinite tools. Everyone every day is developing something. It is currently the AI hype, and there are all of these cheesy videos with everything blurring and merging that you see on LinkedIn all the time, and they're very easy to create. You can just go on and download some of this open source tools and utilize them. I would be careful with those tools. There is no way to sort of understand where they've come from, how they were built, what people are doing them. But I think for me, all of these kind of experiments, let's say, they're great and a bit of fun, but the real potential of AI is introducing it into your data, pipeline, into what you do at work and how you can use that, moving forwards.
Thank you, Joey. Well, we are already here, so let's sum it up. From this session, I think you've understand that we've reached the stage where we need to get used to the thought that content will be created with generative AI. And therefore, we need to shape our skills in using these tools if we're going to leverage AI in our businesses, which we at some point need to do. And to do this, our teams needs to develop further in being able to what we call AI art direct, because AI can really help us in generating ideas and designing more rapidly with speed in the whole creative process. I also want to mention, though, that the two approaches that we were talking about, because the development of these image generators is creating a whole new art scene, and that's so-called AI art, which will lead us to the emerge of new art styles and techniques, expanding the boundaries of creativity.
Yeah, so I think I kind of went over all of the summary before in the previous slides, but basically it's a very efficient, cost-effective way of keeping your brand identity consistent, and it does allow you to have some customization, so the person in control is able to customize that very easily, and yet you can scale it up across, you know, a vast number of people and a vast number of users across your company, you know, instantly. You can just turn it on, and with the future coming, you know, very fast, this automated personalization is definitely the key, and something you need to be thinking about moving forwards. Of course, you can build these custom models yourself, but if that seems like too much work or too much complexity, you can, of course, you can come to us, and we offer this as a service, and we'll be happy to solve your problems. If you have anything super random that you want to challenge us to do, we can have a look at that as well. Always up for a challenge. So here is the mock-up. Well, not a mock-up. This is version 2 of our model. It is slightly different to this now, but it's going to be public release pretty soon. We're currently in a beta phase with a few select clients. So if you're willing to work along with some bugs and watch it develop, then of course, you know, we're more than welcome to accommodate that. But as you see on the left, we have all of the things that we talked about previously. So you have your styles, you have your colors, you have your scene setups, and we will build them for you so you can easily select them and get to work. You don't have to ever worry about anything more than a simple prompt. We will handle all of that. So I've been told to give you a few concrete examples so you can see exactly what we're talking about, how to use this in your work life. So there's one very obvious example here, and that's you can have stock image generator. So instead of going to any of these websites and having a subscription or using the free ones, you can create your brand identity. You can type in what you need and you'll get images that match. And those images will always be consistent on brand, and they're generated in 10 to 15 seconds. So that's a time saving there. It's huge. And yeah, I saw someone asked in the chat about training a product. So throughout this presentation, we mainly concentrated on how to build a style and your essence and incorporate that into imagery. But what I really mean when I say that is we're training an AI model on something. You know, I demonstrated how to do that for a style, but it is very similar if you want to do that for an object, a person, or a product itself. So you can, you know, start with a reference of 30 images, and then build a product for that. And then in your prompt, you can say, I want to have X product, you know, on my style, or I want to have X product at Christmas, at the beach, whatever it may be. And that's pretty basic to set up. And of course, we can do that for you. Just end with something a little bit more fun. So here is what we call object replacement, and this is working in our platform now. But I think this is kind of where we see the future of how AI and a designer will work together. So a designer will create a scene, a 3D object, a 3D setup of how they see the image being framed, and then the AI will finalize that for them. So for here, you just have 2 cubes where you just placed, you know, that's like a 20-second job in Blender. And then I want to say, make these a brownie, make these chocolate, make these some towels. And then it will use your brand style and create that image. If you have trained a product, it will also be able to replace those cubes with the product that's trained. Okay.
Thank you very much, Joey, and thank you very much, Isabel. Thanks everyone who has been listening to us. Just want to summarize quickly how Klingit can be of service to those of you who want to explore AI in design production further. First of all, we are a design as a service provider, and we are already using a lot of generative AI tools in our day-to-day operations in our subscription business. As Joey described, you can set up a customized model yourself, or you can make use of what we call the Klingit AIB, which is a custom model framework that we set up and train for an individual company and for one or multiple use cases. And then finally, we're also offering inspirational and educational workshops on how to leverage generative AI in your organization. So if you are interested in any of these, please feel free to reach out to either one of us, and we will get back to you and discuss more in detail. Now we are getting quite a few questions, and we're going to start the Q&A session. Unfortunately, we will not, I think, have time to answer all questions that we received, but I will start with a follow-up question from Kenny on the product use case. So if you want to use the custom model in a product scenario, do you have to train it for each individual product?
Yeah, I mean, you need to train each product individually if you want it to be matching 100%. So there's a few ways to do it. Of course, if you just want to have like a general, I want to have this sort of product, then you don't need to train each one individually. You can do some tricks to get it, there. But if you have a product, if you work with the product in 3D, then of course we can generate all of these trainings from a 3D model. So then we wouldn't need to have photos or imagery. We can do renders. So you can give us a 3D file, and we can set up an automated pipeline that will just input all of these models or all of these images into our our platform as products that you can call and use in your images.
Great, thank you for that. I hope that answers your question, Kenny. Then we have another question. Is this pipeline that you are describing, Joey, primarily aimed for or best applied in Stable Diffusion, or can you use it in other tools as well?
Yeah, so I did use Stable Diffusion as the demo for this presentation, and we are using Stable Diffusion because of the openness of it. If you think of most of the AI image generators are like Apple, and Stable Diffusion is like Linux. It is complex to use if you're a beginner and you go in there and you type in like I want a dog, you just get an illustration from the example we did. It's not like Midjourney where you instantly get a nice image. On Stable Diffusion you really have to build it up, but that's what we're doing. We're building it up for you. So right now, yeah, we're using Stable Diffusion, but the way that we've built our pipeline means that in the future we may possibly change out of Stable Diffusion into another tool. So we're managing the layer between you and the AI, and that does give us the freedom to change the AI at some point in the future if there's better ones, faster ones, whatever it may be.
Great, thanks for that. Another question. Could I feed an image which was created in, for instance, Midjourney or DALL-E into the blue color palette that you showed here and recreate it with this color palette blue?
Yeah, exactly. So we have on the platform, we have sort of 4 main areas where we have, generate from scratch. So you type in a prompt. We have vary. Vary will take the image you have and it will give you slight variation. So if you have an image of a person that, you can say, make this person a woman, make this person a man, that kind of thing. You also have something that we call like restyle, and restyle is exactly what you've mentioned there, where you drop an image in, you don't need to type anything and it will restyle that image to your brand's identity. We don't take responsibility for what you do, right? So if you put in a copyrighted image or someone else's artwork, that's on you. We can't monitor all this, but yeah, that does work, and that's automatic. And then of course the object replacement, which we just went over.
Then we have a question from Sarar. If you are comparing building a model like this to doing photo shoots, Where would you say there is a breaking point in terms of investment? Can that be said in terms of amount of images or something like that?
Can you say that again? Sorry.
So the question would be if there is a breaking point in terms of investment when it's more efficient to build a model than to do a photo shoot.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. That's for you to know. Yeah, so I think the thing with an AI model is once you set it up, you can use it infinitely, right? So you need to decide at what point does your, how many times are you going to use this imagery? If you're going to do one photo shoot, then yeah, do one photo shoot, right? If it's only one, then stick with that. But if it is, one every month or two a month, then you start getting into a realm where having your own model makes sense. And the thing about building your own model is you will find other uses for it. You will start using it day to day, so you will get your money back in ways that you haven't thought of. Of course, it does seem a bit daunting changing from one thing to another, but I think the key thing here is this is the beginning of AI, so you should get into it and start using it. Whether or not you're replacing your traditional media, at least you've got a handle on how to use that and implement it for the future.
Thank you so much for that answer. Could objects that are generated within your model, and I guess that refers to the AI, be rotated? As if I would take a photograph of the same scene from above or behind of the scene.
Yeah, I mean, then, yeah, it's possible. But yeah, so if you're using the object replacement, you would just have like 4 images from different angles and then have them, replaced with what you want. If you take like, yeah, I know what you're asking. It is possible, but we don't have that as a built-in feature to the platform yet. Maybe that's something we will add.
Yeah, okay. And we have another question from Gustav. How can a brand secure its unique brand identity and profile using AI? Can it be a risk that content or imagery will be shaped in the same form?
I'm not sure I really understand, but if you build your from a data aspect, your data is safe. That is stored and it's not shared. From a custom model point of view, no one will have access to your custom model, so they won't be able to use what you've done. I think hopefully that covers your question.
If it doesn't, then please write in the chat. So we are continuing with a question from Christopher. Are you also able to do the data structuring and management of a business when setting up your generative AI models?
Yeah, I mean, so there are some setup things to think about. I assume most companies, brands, clients, whoever have a CMS, and that needs to be organized. And I'm sure that traditional Klingit services would be much better at managing this sort of thing than us with the AI side of things. But yeah, we would just need an organized way or an easy way to access your files and to handle the iterations and versioning. We're built on AWS, so that's where everything we are is stored. So if you need some sort of integration, it's relatively easy to do.
All right, thank you so much for that answer, Joey. We have another question from Rob Ryder. If I change my brand identity, do you need a photo shoot or real images to train the model on the new identity, or can you already use the AI to generate creatives using the new identity?
Yeah, so we don't need photos to do anything, but everything is based on the better the stuff you put in, the better the stuff you get out. So you can start with nothing and we can build it up from imagination or from AI generated imagery, but that's not going to be as good as real photos. So your first point would be, if we want to change your brand identity, I'm assuming that we already have trained your original brand identity. So changing it is pretty easy. We can do the colors, we can affect the mood because we are doing an effect on what we've already trained. So that is that's pretty easy. And then we can feed back in the images that are generated to update the style. But the more AI imagery you use to train an AI, the worse it gets over time. And at some point, it just looks like the stuff you see on, you know, LinkedIn. That's like luminous, vibrant, ridiculous AI art.
Yeah. We have a follow-up question from Rob as well. Will you eventually need new real photos or videos to update the model? I think you partly answered this, but maybe you want to add something.
Yeah, I mean, this is not to, this is not to replace traditional content completely. It's a hybrid of using traditional content to make, to be more cost effective. So I would say you always want to assess your brand and ensure that you have a good brand identity and style that is done, in the real world, and we will use that to elaborate all of this work into wherever you want to take it.
I have another question here. How do you foresee the evolution of generative AI in the next few years, especially concerning creative industries like advertising and design?
Well, I think looking forward, like from a design perspective, as I said, we by this stage have to get used to the fact that content will be created with AI, and therefore our creative teams needs to develop further in these skills to keep it up, because the AI tools is also getting like better and better every day, and so does the results that it's producing. We've just seen the beginning, right? So I think like generative AI tools will be standardized, integrated into our workflows, which will allow us to design more rapidly and speed up the whole creative process. And maybe the focus in creative professions will shift from towards ideation and strategy, with AI handling more of the execution, I think.
Thank you so much for that, Isabel. I hope that answers the question. We have another question from Chiara. You mentioned increasing a business's image bank as a use case. Let's say that there are not that many images of a certain subject or context available, and the business would like to make more of them. What is the bare minimum of material on that subject? For instance, technicians working in a production studio that the AI needs to be trained on to be able to produce more.
Yeah, so if you're thinking of like the general purpose stock image generator, then we would train the style and not specific things. Stable diffusion base model is based on, millions and millions of imagery. So they should have what you need as reference built in. Of course, if you have specific setups, you mentioned something technical, which I don't know if Stable Diffusion will be able to do, then we would have to take in, I would say, 8 would be your minimum images, 8 to 10 would be minimum. I usually like to work, 30 to 80 being, an optimal range. If this is like something that is obscure, if it's something that is quite common, then your 8 images will suffice. But if it's something really obscure that it has to learn, then the more imagery the better. But you can always try. You can always start with one image and see if it works. Who knows? Sometimes it surprises you.
I have another question from Alex. So the costs of training and hosting the own model are separated products at Klingit. And I think I can answer this one myself, because also for Klingit, AI is something that we explore together with our customers, and the business model will be defined in those projects. So at the moment, we're exploring this, and we are aiming to be flexible in how we set this up and how we cost this. Then I have a very short question here. Do you believe that AI is just a hype?
I say no. What do you say, Joey?
Yeah, I mean, AI videos and all of these awful stuff that I see on LinkedIn, I think, that is complete hype. But to reduce your design studio from 30 people to 5 people and have one technician, that is not hype. That is the reality of where things are going. The people with real creative talent are going to be able to produce, 100 times more work than they are doing now, and that is not going to change. So I think there will be a divide where creative people will become more valuable. And, you know, someone like me that started as a 3D artist, back in the day, just got given a spreadsheet of assets to model. You know, that sort of job's not going to exist, and AI will replace that. But someone that's coming up with a concept or a strategy or a story or a look and feel, they're going to be more valuable. So I think that the AI and that person are going to be, that is not a hype. That is something that's here to stay.
And I think just to remember also, and to add on to this, to like see it as two separate things, because I do believe that like the AI art that we're seeing will become, it will open up a whole new like art scene itself, where what Joey is talking about is more of like how we can use this day to day, right?
Yes, so thank you. And I can see that people are starting to leave and that it's almost 12 o'clock. So we're going to start to wrap this up. One final question regarding the copyright concerns with AI generated images. How does using an open source platform like Stable Diffusion help mitigate the legal risks compared to closed source platforms or other platforms?
Yeah, so the legal situations of AI is quite complex, but from my point of view, I want to emphasize that we're not creating artwork from scratch. We are trying to take what you have as a brand, your existing content, create that into guidelines. So we're not stealing, you know, original artwork. We're replacing stock image generation, and we're using that based on your imagery. So the Stable Diffusion model that we're using is commercially, you know, used. That is allowed. They're covering the legal side of things, but of course we are monitoring that. And as I said previously, if the situation changes and Stable Diffusion can no longer, you know, support that, or they get into sort of issues, then we will change to an AI platform that is completely safe and has covered all of the legal aspects. So we're just a layer in between sort of the AI and the content. So we're monitoring the situation.
Thank you so much, Joey, and thanks, Isabel, and thank all of you who have been listening to us. As I've said in the beginning, if you have a question that you feel has not been answered, then I will go through the chat history and try to reach out to all of you who posed questions that we did not have time to answer. You are also, of course, more than welcome to reach out to either one of us, and we will try to get back to you with a reply. Again, thanks for coming to this webinar. We hope that it was valuable to as many as possible. We also hope to see you in the future. We will host more webinars shortly, and we will share upcoming webinars on our website and in our social media channels, so be on the lookout there. Once again, thanks everyone for attending this session. Have a great lunch and a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.